We're talking dynasty ranks and the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational here on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is the Prospect Pod. Hope you'll join us. Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, brought to you by WinBet. Clay Link here with RotoWire.com's lead prospect analyst, James Anderson. Great to be with you. If you're listening to the podcast through your normal channels, or if you're with us on the live stream, appreciate it. James, bad time in baseball right now. Ugly day yesterday, but you're staying busy. That's the way to go when things aren't the best. Just keep your head down, your nose to the grindstone. You updated the dynasty ranks. You got multiple drafts going right now, and you got AL Labor coming up on Friday. So how are you doing today on this Wednesday, considering?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised by any of the labor issues that are going on. And I'm kind of, just generally a pessimist. And so I've kind of expected all this to happen, but I'm not going to let the baseball owners ruin my favorite hobby. And
that's a good way to think of it.
Like you said, midway through two of my favorite drafts of the year, the TGFBI slow draft and the Tout Wars draft and hold slow draft, and prepping for what'll be probably my biggest test of the season, the AL Labor auction. So really busy week and a fun week, everything considered.
Yeah, considering, I'm trying to stay positive. And I'm excited to talk about labor. You're, of course, stepping into the AL this year, first time in labor. And I'm excited to talk with you about what you do, and I'm excited to see what you do. I know we talked about one player in particular that you're going to build your entire strategy around. I'm excited to see if you actually do that and how you follow it up. And I think you told me on Saturday we're going to have a couple of your league mates from that league, right, on the XM show, Colette and Brett Sayer.
Yeah, that'll be fun. We usually have Brett on a couple times a year, and we are going to be back to having Jason on every Saturday. So yeah, that should be fun to kind of see how things went. I obviously have a lot of plans in place, but I assume that a lot of those plans will go up in smoke. So we'll see how everything unfolds.
Yeah, you got a plan, but then in the first couple minutes of that auction seller cap draft, you're going to get punched in the mouth, and then all the plans go out the window, not literally, but figuratively. James, I mentioned too that you updated the dynasty rankings for the site, your top 400 prospect rankings, of course, separate. These are dynasty rankings, and they're for OBP leagues. That's a important distinction that you have to take into account. And you noted it right away in your dynasty rankings update article, which was a brief little introduction to this latest update. I found it interesting that even though these are OBP, Kevin Biggio couldn't hang on to a spot. Quite an indictment. Kevin.
Well, I mean, he didn't lose a spot. He didn't have a spot to begin with. But I mean, I just don't think he's good. And I think that there'll be probably some playing time for him early in the year. But I would just much rather use a spot in that 400 to promote a player who I think is good. And so he did not factor in.
Alec Boehm also not on the dynasty ranks. So,
but that's, that actually is the reason I mentioned those guys is like, I don't think those guys are good. But
you're lower than the consensus.
If you think they're good, there's nothing wrong with valuing them over plenty of the guys that I have in that 300 to 400 range. I could definitely be wrong about one or both of those guys. So I'm not trying to make these rankings some sort of industry consensus or some sort of like industry acceptable trade barometer type of thing. Like, these are guys that I value, and I tried to show that in the rankings, and you can kind of do with that what you will.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. RotoWire.com/try. If you want to check out 10 days on us, you can see all of James's work. You can go through the archives, check out James's past articles, his prospect rankings, and these dynasty rankings. Again, for OBP leagues, Any other, caveats you want to mention for people who may be unfamiliar with these, and maybe, give some tips on how to best use them?
Well, you gotta sync. You gotta use the My Leagues feature. I know that every week it seems like there's a subscriber who kind of discovers the My Leagues feature for the first time, and uh, it's a total game changer. You can sync up your league and see which of these guys are available. You can see where the guys on your roster rank. So I mean that's the first thing you should do. Obviously, if you're a contending team, you can feel free to value guys like Charlie Blackman or like a Nick Pavetta, Rich Hill, someone who could help you this year, but realistically won't be helping you much longer than that, or at least just doesn't have like any kind of a upside to be a prize commodity. But I mean, if you're contending this year, you can value guys like that over some of the prospects that I have kind of in the back 100 spots. And then conversely, like if you're rebuilding, you can use the cool filters on that page. You can click the green add a filter button, and you can make it so that it only shows you players who are like 28 and younger or 30 and younger or something like that. And you can just kind of exclude those older guys that just don't really fit into your contention cycle. And then once you've kind of exhausted the top 400 dynasty rankings, if you're a rebuilder, you should just head over to the top 400 prospect rankings and kind of go from there. I tried to really include as many young non-prospects as I felt were relevant on these rankings. Like there aren't a ton of young non-prospects that I think you should be worried about as a rebuilder who didn't make that cut. So just go right over to those prospect rankings. And yeah, like I said, like you said, these are for OBP leagues. The prospect rankings are for batting average leagues. So try to give people a little bit of both there. So that kind of explains why you might see a different ordering on the prospect rankings versus the dynasty rankings. These are also for a league where roughly 30 catchers are started. The prospect rankings are for leagues where roughly 20 catchers are started. That doesn't change a ton, but it does bump up some of the catchers a little bit. So yeah, that's all stuff that you should kind of keep in mind. But and then again, like these are not meant to be used as like a very rigid set of rankings where you just look at the guy who's a couple spots ahead of a guy that you have and you send out a trade offer just because of where I have these guys on the rankings. It's a loose kind of collection of players. Like there are tiers within here. You should trust yourself a little bit. I mean, if you like a guy higher than I have him, I think you should value your own take on these guys. So I think that pretty much covers how I would go about using these.
That's really helpful. Thank you for explaining all that, and really great work. I know you put a ton of time into these, and yeah, our tech crew knocked it out of the park with that My Leagues feature. We don't talk about it enough, but absolutely import your leagues. It's super easy. We have pretty much every, the commish service in there. You can easily import and, kind of have like live cheat sheets as you're doing a draft. It's pretty amazing. So definitely do that. And yeah, they're really good stuff here. Also, you mentioned these are for, we both did several times that these are for OBP leagues, but we do have the show average league arrows icons. You can get a rough idea of guys whose value increases, decreases moving to batting average leagues from OBP. Work the filters that you mentioned with that green button, and yeah, use some common sense based on where you're at in your competitive window in your dynasty leagues. These are really helpful, James. Again, rotowire.com/try to check them out for yourself. TGFBI also up and running. How far are you guys? You 9 rounds deep? How many picks have you made?
I've made 9 picks. Yeah.
I just made my 9th right before we started this show, and I actually went with a 5th straight hitter a fifth straight pitcher after starting with 4 straight hitters, Bo Bichette, Jordan Alvarez, Whit Merrifield, and Eloy. So yeah, I kind of wanted your guy Ahmed Rosario, but he went a couple spots before me. So Shane Boz, I'll happily roster. How did you start your TGFBI draft?
I went Trey Turner at first overall, and then Josh Hader and Whit Merrifield at the 2-3 turn. So picks 30 and 31. My kind of dream realistic scenario was to go Hader, Tim Anderson there, but Anderson went. Merrifield, kind of similar to Anderson. I like Anderson more because I think he's going to hit for a higher average, hit for more power, probably score more runs. And I don't see any sort of risk of him kind of falling off. I mean, Merrifield's, older than I would typically like a player of that ilk to be that I'm taking that high in a draft. But I really, I found it appealing to lock up as much speed as I could. And those two guys, I mean, that's 60 steals pretty safely if Turner and Merrifield stay healthy. So that's a nice building block there.
I like the way you did that. And I kind of took a similar approach in terms of building speed early. I went Bo Bichette, and then I went Merrifield as well in the third. Jordan in the second, as I mentioned. Jason Colette, his Need for Speed article that went on the site, I think, last week. I mean, I already had this in mind to prioritize speed, but he makes some good points that pretty much a third of all the projected steals in the pool, granted those are projected and more will come into the pool in time, but about a third are gone by pick 100, 2/3 by, or I guess 50% by pick 200. And I don't want those one trick ponies like Whit Merrifield, or like Whit Merrifield's not a one trick pony, like Mondesi or Miles Straw. So I want to build those up incrementally. I thought I did that pretty well early, but now I'm once again kind of left scrambling because I got my steals with Bo Bichette and Whit Merrifield. Thought I was doing pretty well, but here we are, 6 rounds later, and I got to figure something out to build and add to that base. I was hoping to get Ahmed Rosario, as I said. You did get him, and you've kind of been pumping that train. I heard you on MLB, or not on MLB Network Radio, but SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio with Jeff Erickson this week. Seems like you're ending up with Rosario on a lot of teams.
Well, not as many as I'd like, but I mean, he is a prime target for me. I haven't gotten Dansby Swanson or Ahmed Rosario on as many teams as I like. I think I've gotten both those guys a couple times, but I mean, Rosario is a guy who kind of does a little bit of everything, and he's not going to give you 30 steals, but he will give you 15 steals, maybe even 20 steals, and he's not going to hurt your batting average, or at least I don't think he's going to hurt your batting average. He might even help it a little bit. I think he's going to probably hit in the top 3 spots of that lineup, maybe second in that lineup for most or all the season, which it's not a good lineup, but I mean, you'll still take that. He's going to probably hit 10 to 15 homers. So there just aren't many guys, after the like Jorge Polanco, Jonathan India, Tommy Edman types go. There just aren't many guys who are going to get you double-digit homers, double-digit steals, maybe push past 15 steals while helping your batting average. He's kind of the last of that group. I mean, I think Colton Wong probably qualifies there as well, but Rosario, I think, probably hits for a better average than Wong. And shortstop, once you get past Rosario, shortstop really dries up. Like I actually didn't realize this till like my 5th or 6th draft of the offseason, and it's usually because I'm always pounding shortstop in those early rounds because that's where you're getting that really good speed. Most of the time is from a shortstop or second baseman or an outfielder. But if you wait on shortstop for whatever reason, and you miss on like Swanson or Rosario, or even, Cronenworth or Chris Taylor, like if you somehow miss on those guys, maybe even you're talking about your like middle infielder, they're just, Gene Segura, Colton Wong, those are kind of like the last middle infielders that are going to give you double-digit homers, double-digit steals. So it dries up in a hurry. And my league hadn't been pushing speed as much as like a typical NFBC league. So I maybe like reached on Jazz Chisholm at pick 61 because I did have the option then on the way back at pick 90. Tommy Edman was still there, which I did not really expect. And if I had expected that, I probably wouldn't have taken Jazz at 61. But it's just really appealing to me to get as much speed as I think I'm going to need in the first, 8, 9, 10 rounds, because there's just nothing worse than knowing you don't have enough speed after like round 10 and you start taking guys that you would normally not take. You start, gambling on prospects kind of in those late to mid rounds because you're just like, I know I don't have enough speed. I need to hit on one of these guys. If you can get that speed in those first 8 to 10 rounds, it's just so much more relaxing, and you can go after those. There's just so many nice hitters to go after in the 200s that are going to help you in like 3 to 4 categories, but aren't going to help you in speed. So it's just the more drafts I've done this offseason, the more that, stolen bases. I mean, we talk about saves a lot, but stolen bases on the offensive side, you have to get those in those first 10 rounds.
I'm with you. I think that's going to be the foundation, that mindset of all my drafts, just getting those early. Now points leagues, head to head, you can pretty much throw steals out the window in my opinion, but in Roto league, especially one with an overall component, you have to build up some steals. And so I want to get those early. And even in a standalone Roto league, I don't want to punt a category. I don't want to put myself at a disadvantage and have to climb uphill all season, but you can, de-emphasize steals a little bit in a standalone league. TGFBI, of course, does have the overall component. I'm going to have to build to my base. Right now, I got guys like Colton Wong in my queue, Avisail Garcia. I like Josh Rojas, too. You didn't mention him with the double-digit homers and steals guys in the middle infield. Maybe not or maybe you did. I
didn't. I mean, he actually is. I didn't mention him. I didn't go that
He's
far
a little
down.
lower down, but
he is like kind of, I think like there's some sort of similarities almost with like Rojas and very like different types of fantasy production. But like I like Miles Straw. Like I would take Miles Straw if I needed a guy that was going to give me 25, 30 steals. But there's only one Miles Straw, and there's also kind of only one Josh Rojas in terms of a guy that's going as late as he's going who can help you. So it's like you can't
eligibility too.
Yeah, you can't like be like, well, I'll just get Rojas later or I'll just get Straw later because there's only one. And then when you don't get that guy, then it's like, oh crap, well now am I taking Andres Menes now? So it's just, I kind of like to do it before then because there's only that one shot. And if Miles Straw is there for you and it makes sense, then I'm happy to do it. If Rojas is there and it makes sense, I'm always happy to do it. But I also don't want to be in a position where I'm like reaching for Josh Rojas at pick 165 or something.
Yeah, he's like the last of a dying breed there in the late 100s, and people push him up.
Right.
Yeah, I might be that guy this time, but I got some speed early, then I went away. But I think in future drafts, like with my 4th round pick, I was happy to land Eloy, but I kind of regretting that now because I kind of wish I'd added more speed to the base. And I set the min on in TGFBI, the min on Eloy Jimenez at 56. He went as late as 88. That according to John Anderson on Twitter. Give him a follow right now, by the way. But yeah, do you think I maybe made a misstep there and going Eloy at 56? I love Eloy, but do you think I maybe should have gone a different route with that 4th round pick?
Yeah, I mean, Eloy is a great example of a player where the format really, really matters. We're talking about TGFBI, so I'm sure most people listening are at least aware of TGFBI or playing in TGFBI. But in a TGFBI league, I wouldn't take Eloy. I mean, I wouldn't take a bunch of guys like him. It's just with that overall component. I know that he's great. I mean, I know some people are actually kind of down on Eloy and think he's
Really?
overrated. Someone commented in my dynasty rankings that they think I'm way too high on Eloy, which is fine. But like if I was in a points league or even a standalone league, especially a batting average standalone league, or some like a dynasty league, a keeper league, Eloy is just a prime target, a guy that I'm probably trying to trade for this offseason. But in a league with an overall component like TGFBI or the main event or the online championship, I just really have no interest in taking someone who's not going to give me stolen bases where he's going. So I would have taken either a closer or a speed guy where you took him. But I mean, he's definitely good. I mean, he's gonna
pretty good.
Like he's gonna help you. It just kind of
That's a valuable
exactly
pick.
how you laid it out. Like I would rather take Jazz Chisholm than Eloy in a league with an overall component because of the specific production that I'm getting there.
Yeah, great guy, but he doesn't help you corner those super scarce categories. So I kind of do wish I'd gone a different route in the 4th. But we will talk more about TGFBI. We'll talk about James's Tout Wars Draft and Hold League. And then we'll circle back with some more prospect talk here. So stay with us. We'll be back after the break. And we are back on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, brought to you by WinBet. Clay Link here with James Anderson, lead prospect analyst at RotoWire.com. And we're talking about our draft so far in the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational. Each of us have made 9 picks. I mentioned, James, that I took Eloy in the 4th and set the min on him. My next pick, I guess I set the max, the latest he's gone in any TGFBI draft, on Freddie Peralta. Of course, you're a Brewers guy, but I looked at your dynasty ranks, 68 for Peralta. Seemed to me maybe a little low given, he's only 25 years old, but I just couldn't let him fall any further. But at the same time, I do feel a little shaky about him heading up the staff. Do you have concerns about Peralta? Are you ending up with him anywhere?
No, I don't really take it's like I've just done so many drafts. Like I know exactly where I'm taking which positions, and I'm just not taking starting pitching where Freddie goes. Like I'm taking closers there. I'm taking speed guys there. I'm just not taking starting pitching there. I'll take an ace in round 1 or 2. I'll maybe take Sandy or Giolito in round 3. But if I don't get, like, once Giolito is gone, I'm not looking at pitching again until around, pick 80, pick 90. So it's kind of where Freddie goes that I'm just kind of hands off, because I don't think Freddie is clearly better than your next 2 starting pitchers, like Dylan Cease, Alec Manoa, your SP2, your SP3. Like I could easily see one or both those guys having as good or a better year than Freddie. So it's all about where he's going. Like I think he's great, but I just think like there's just this huge tier of starting pitchers, and for whatever reason, Freddie is getting picked up near the very top of that tier, and I just think that the guys you can get 20, 30 picks later are just as good.
I hear you. Yeah, I don't love dipping my toes into this grouping here. I missed on Giolito by a couple picks, but that's what happens when you start 4 straight hitters. You got to get in that pool eventually. I kind of wish I'd maybe gone like with Musgrove or even Barrios over Peralta. Do you take either of those guys over Freddie?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. You're not real high on either of those guys.
I mean, they're fine. I mean, I would have I would have probably taken either a speed guy or a closer where you took Freddie.
I hear you. I was happy to get Kenley Jansen in between Peralta and Cease. Don't know where he's going to sign, but he's going to be given some assurances wherever he signs that he's going to be the guy. I would assume anyway that, after the career he's built up, he's not going to sign somewhere to set up. And Cease, I just felt like I had to build the strikeouts. The ratios do concern me a little bit. And then I got Alec Manoa in the 8th. You got him in the 6th. So I was definitely lucked out on our guy, Alec Manoa.
So what number was that in the 8th?
Let's see here.
That's just wild to me. I thought I was getting a steal. I got Manoa at pick 90.
Yeah, I got him with the 10th pick of the 8th. Or I guess the 11th pick of the 8th. So late 8th round. It seems pretty crazy.
That's outside the top 100.
Yeah. So like guys like Verlander, Montas, Luis Castillo, Gallen ahead of Manoa. I mean, I don't hate Gallen. And then on the way back, I did take Shane Baz. I considered Cabrian Hayes, who went right after, looking for maybe some steals from third base, but going to have to get back into the hitting pool here very soon. You took Charlie Morton. Seems like you're ending up with a ton of Morton, and I think we talked about this maybe just last week, but it does seem like he's just kind of a guy who floats in the wind and is always there at a reasonable cost.
Yeah, my toughest call of the draft probably was I was up at pick 91. I just taken Alec Manoa. And I was between Charlie Morton and Trevor Rogers. And I honestly flip a coin on those two. I ended up going with Morton just because I think he's probably a better bet to get double-digit wins. But I love Morton. I love Rogers. With this specific build where I went with Josh Hader and Edwin Diaz as my first two pitchers, happy to have either Morton or Rogers as my SP2 there. But yeah, I mean, Morton, he's just really, really good. Doesn't get treated like an ace, but he's basically a top 15 starter on a per inning basis.
Yeah, he's pitched like an ace and really had a great year last year. Just kind of, even though they won the World Series and he got hurt during the World Series, and that kind of plays a big part of it, just not knowing exactly his health. It was a leg injury. So I'm really not that concerned about his arm, even at an advanced age. I think Morton should be okay. Yeah, James, let's move on and talk a little bit about your draft and hold league, unless you have anything else to add about TGFBI.
No.
By the way, how much money do you have set aside for Manoa and Labor? Do you got a 20 spot reserved? Oh,
yeah. Probably got a 20 spot. We'll see.
Probably plan on a 20 spot. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what you do there. But yeah, I see your latest pick was Luis Garcia of Houston. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I love Garcia. Again, that was another spot I was kind of between Luis Garcia and Zach Gallen there. Actually, I mean, I thought about actually grabbing a third closer there. Corey Knebel was there. I thought that was way too late for him, and I didn't want my league mates to get that value. But I kind of rolled the dice to see if Knebel would come back. I thought about just going three closers because if you're trying to win the overall, I
gives you all 1,000 a fab to play with elsewhere.
Right. And I could maybe lead all of TGFBI in saves, maybe with Hader, Diaz, and Knebel, and then I think I've got the type of roster that could be near the top in stolen bases. So if you're loaded at steals and saves, and then you draft well and you work the wire well, and maybe stay more active than some of your league mates as we get into the dog days of summer, that could maybe be a recipe for winning the overall. But didn't want to get too cute there. I mean, Luis Garcia, I think, is a total stud. Maybe another guy I'll be saving some cash for in AL labor. And then again, like with Garcia versus Gallen, I felt like Garcia had the higher ceiling because of the wins factor with Houston versus Arizona.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the right call there. Now, James, the Draft and Hold Tout Wars League you're doing, I know you've been in it for a few years. What kind of format is this, aside from Draft and Hold, obviously?
Well, yeah, 50-round draft and hold, but the big difference is OBP instead of batting average. Believe that's the case for all the Tout Wars leagues. So
Yeah,
the fact that it's the fact that it's OBP instead of batting average, and the fact that there is no overall component really shifted sort of my strategy and valuations pretty drastically compared to a league like TGFBI, where it's batting average and you're not playing TGFBI to try to win your league. You're trying to win the overall, right?
Yeah.
So in Tout, I'm just trying to win the league, and obviously that kind of leads to a different strategy.
Yeah, so with your first pick, 1-6 OBP league, you took Bryce Harper. I love the pick. Was anybody else really in the mix for you there, or was that like an insta click snap?
My top three available there were Harper, Ohtani, and Vlad Guerrero. But I would rather take an outfielder than a first baseman there. Lots of first baseman I like later in the draft. And I'd rather take an outfielder than a util only guy there. And Harper is going to have the stolen base edge on Vlad. So Harper, I'm honestly really thankful that Fred Zinke took Trey Turner ahead of me, because I would have probably taken Harper ahead of Turner, and I just didn't want to have to explain why to people. So
That's a good idea. That plays into my decision-making process sometimes too.
Like I would have done it.
I don't
It
want
would
to
have just been
deal.
really annoying. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you there, man. Bryce Harper and OBP is such a stud. And this is something I've talked about like with Todd on MLB Network Radio, but I think you're right about addressing outfield early. It's something I've been wanting to do, and that did play into my Eloy decision in TGFBI. I think that there's an edge to be gained by loading up early in the outfield and avoiding a lot of those platoon bats that just lose out on plate appearances. Then you're left trying to look up and make up ground elsewhere. I think I've been prioritizing outfield, and I may end up moving Whit Merrifield to the outfield. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say that I'm prioritizing outfield over everything, but if
I wouldn't say that either. But
if it's outfield versus first base, then
Yeah.
I'm going to take an outfielder. I would take a shortstop, second base, third base, catcher. Like all things being equal, I'd rather fill those spots than outfield, because there is you definitely don't want to get to like pick 275 and still need one of your starting outfielders, because then it's really dry at that point.
Yeah.
And you are choosing between platoon bats. But the outfielders, like I'll sometimes have a draft where I'll take 4 straight outfielders from pick like 180 to pick 230, because I love that range. You're still getting starting outfielders. You're still getting outfielders who are going to hit top 4 in their lineup. Everyday guys in that range. They're just, for whatever reason, they're not as sexy as some of the guys that go ahead of them. But yeah, I mean, Harper versus Vlad, really, really close to me. And I would rather take an outfielder in that scenario.
I hear you. I'm about in that range. Well, not quite in like the 180s, but looking at the outfielders who may be available come that time, it's, I see some names I like, but yeah, I don't want to have 5 of these guys.
Well, I'll list off a few just because I'm sure people are like, well, who are you talking about?
I do like Conforto in that range.
Yeah, like Conforto, Benintendi, Kike Hernandez, Marcelo Zuna, Jorge Soler, Alex Kirilloff, Jesus Sanchez. Like that run of 7 guys, like you're getting 3+ category production from all of them. In some cases, you might be getting 4 category production. Like you're getting like with Ozuna and Soler and Kirilloff, like those guys could all hit 30 plus homers. Everyday guys hitting top 4 in their lineup, like I said, like in most of those cases. So if I end up with 3 or 4 of those 7, I'm really happy about that.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I differ from you a little bit there, and still don't see a ton of speed in that grouping, but Conforto and Ozuna, I think he's right now kind of a priority. I just added him to my queue. Thanks for reminding me, because he's not going to be facing any criminal charges. Even his misdemeanors were dropped.
No,
they want him back. They've made it clear that he'll be back.
And he killed it in the Dominican Winter League. And that's just it's a really nice setup. But he might be hitting maybe 5th right behind Riley. Maybe, yeah. So yeah, I mean, the only one in that range you might get speed from is Benintendi. But I mean, like I just said, if I've done my draft correctly, I've got my speed at that point.
Well put. Well, we'll bring you a quick word from our sponsors. Take care of a little business, then we'll wrap things up today with more Tout Wars talk and also a little prospect talk. WinBet is now the exclusive sponsor for RotoWire's fantasy podcast. WinBet brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WinBet's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at baccarat. WinBet is currently available in 9 states: Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WinBet, the possibilities are limitless. Register at WinBet today, make a qualifying deposit, and wager to receive $200 in free bets. Promotion may vary by state. Download WinBet now. That's WYNNBET. WinBet, the exclusive partner for RotoWire's fantasy podcasts. Also, experience a new way to play daily fantasy sports on Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is an exciting player prop fantasy contest. With Thrive Fantasy, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus on only the top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Sign up for Thrive Fantasy today and receive a free 6-month RotoWire subscription. Here's how you can claim your free RotoWire subscription. Number 1, visit rotowire.com/thrive. 2, deposit a minimum of $10 and receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. Then finally, play in your first paid contest and receive a free 6-month RotoWire subscription. So, James, you followed up Bryce Harper with Zach Wheeler. Kind of interesting. I didn't know you were really in on the Wheeler train this year. But then Will Smith of the Dodgers in the 3rd, and then JT Realmuto hammering 2 high-end catchers early. That's an interesting strategy.
Yeah. I mean, Wheeler, I think this is actually my 3rd share of Wheeler. It's between him and Woodruff for SP3 to me. I could go either way there. I'd probably want to have similar exposure to Wheeler and Woodruff if possible, but Wheeler was the 7th starter to go here. It went Cole, Burns, Bieber, Woodruff, Buehler, Scherzer, and then I took Wheeler, and then DeGrom and Alcantara went with the next 2 picks. That actually, because you know how we do like Tout Wars, you get to pick your draft slot based on the order of finish from the prior season. I finished 3rd, but Fred Zinke joined the league and he won. I think it was maybe NL Tout the prior year. So I had the 4th selection and I chose the 6th slot because I knew I was going to get one of my preferred elite hitters, and I thought I could still get one of those aces. I was hoping either Aaron Judge, Manny Machado, or Woodruff or Wheeler would fall there, and so that ended up working perfectly because I know Zinke said on yesterday's pod he would have taken Wheeler over to DeGrom there. So the first 2 rounds went pretty textbook according to plan. Then in the 3rd round, all of my favorite closers had gone. I thought long and hard about Ryan Presley. Friend of the show, Rob DiPietro, has been pushing this Hector Neris possible closer thing, and it's been I don't buy it, but I also don't think it's a 0% chance. And I've got, I think, 2 shares of Presley already. And I just, it was really tough. It was between Presley, and then I was like, I really wanted either JT Realmuto or Will Smith there. And I just think those two guys are, Will Smith's an OBP god. Like if you look at,
just insane.
like if you look at like the Bad X in the auction calculator, I think Will Smith is just as valuable as Rafael Devers in this format.
Wow.
I know people don't want to pay full projection price on a catcher, but I'm okay doing this. I mean, I think one of the fun things about this league, and I think Fred mentioned this on one of the pods with Jeff, is there is no ADP for this format, right? There's no OBP draft and hold ADP. Like you can look at the NFBC ADP, but it's a different ball game. And I think if you had that level of ADP for an OBP league like this, I think Will Smith would be a 3rd round pick and arguably the top catcher in that format. I think he's as rock solid as they come. And it was between him and JT Realmuto if I was going to go with a hitter there. And so when Realmuto was there on the way back, it was a pretty easy call to go with him. I might not take another catcher the rest of the draft. It's a 50 rounder. I've ended up with 2 top 4 catchers and a few other drafts this year. And in most of those, I haven't taken a 3rd catcher just because, if one of those guys misses 20 games, so be it. I'll still have the best catcher production in the league. If one of those guys misses 50 games, then I'm kind of screwed either way. And so part of the appeal there is just like, I don't have to worry about using my 35th round pick on Manny Pena. I can just be pounding pitching in those rounds. And I think that OBP base of having Bryce Harper and then Will Smith and JT Realmuto as my starting catchers, like that just gives me such a leg up from an OBP standpoint. And with Harper and Realmuto, definitely not part of the thinking to have a mini Phillies stack. But I am getting about, maybe 30 steals, 28 steals out of those 2 guys. So definitely wasn't the plan to end up with catchers in round 3 and round 4, but I was planning on getting 2 of Smith, Realmuto, Grandal, and Varsho. And so just getting those 2 in rounds 3 and 4 was fine. Was surprised that Realmuto made it back, but totally happy with that.
Yeah, the scarcity bump, those 2 guys getting a 15-team 2-catcher league, Will Smith and Realmuto, that gives you a pretty big leg up. I love that, the strategy to attack there. And good team. You mentioned you passed on Presley, so I'm assuming you're going to be prioritizing closers still. I mean, draft and hold, you don't want to be taking like 13 setup men, I assume is you're thinking.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, the top 2 guys in my queue for the 5th round are
Both
Kenley
closers.
Jansen and Jordan Romano.
Yeah.
You've got Presley went right after me to Vlad Sedler in the 3rd round, and then Aroldis Chapman and Will Smith have already gone in the 4th. I could have taken Kenley there, but teams 1, 2, 3, and 4 all have at least 1 closer. And so I'm kind of thinking that one of Kenley or Romano will be there in the 5th. If they're not, it's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. And again, part of the difference between this tout league, which is standalone, and TGFBI, where 2 of my first 4 picks were closers, is like I'm okay if I can finish like 7th, 8th, 9th in the league in saves. I don't want to. I'm not going to punt the category. Like if I have to reach on like Knable or Melanson or whatever, in a couple rounds, that's fine. But I also, I'm more interested in trying to like lock up those 4 non-speed hitting stats to the best of my abilities and just do my best with saves with this being a standalone league. I would not approach it quite this way if there was an overall prize.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, good luck the rest of the way. I can't wait to talk with you on Farm Friday. Please join us on SiriusXM if you get a chance this Friday. And then, as I said earlier, Saturday will be our AL Labor recap show with you yourself, Jason Colette, and Brett Sayer. That'll be a lot of fun. James, as we wrap things up today, there were a few prospect ranking updates that you noted here on our outline. Cody Morris, Caleb Killian, both on their way up. Anything? We talked about Cody Morris last week, but do you want to mention anything regarding those two?
Yeah, I mean, so I wasn't planning on doing a prospect update for the rankings until close to opening day. But since I did update the dynasty rankings and I had written a bunch of outlooks since the last update to the prospect rankings, I did move some guys around. Cody Morris, Caleb Killian, they have outlooks now on the site. Everyone in the top 100 does. Everyone with like an ADP inside the top 600 of NFBC does. And so, I'd recommend checking those out. But, basically Killian, when I look at him and kind of where his ETA is, to me, I wanted to push him past. I wanted to push him past the guys like Daniel Espino, Uri Perez, Taj Bradley, Kyle Harrison, like those sort of aces in waiting who aren't going to be up this year, but they'll probably be up the following year if they stay healthy. Just because I think Killian's upside is not to be underrated. He's got a really high ceiling just based on his stuff, his size, his strike throwing ability. And he's probably going to be up this summer. So I bumped Killian up inside the top 75, bumped Cody Morris up inside the top 50 to kind of correlate with where those guys were slotted on the OBP rankings or on the dynasty rankings.
Very nice. Yeah. And then Josh Young was a faller. We had a question about him in the chat regarding his, dynasty value. And obviously it takes a hit because proximity needs to be weighed heavily. And now he's looking like he's going to miss the entire year. So tough break for Josh Young. They're in Texas. How far did he fall on your rankings?
Right now he's at 13 behind Tristan Casas and O'Neill Cruz, just ahead of Brian Rocio and Josh Lowe. I'm still kind of not sure exactly where I want to put him. Somewhere in that 10 to 20 range. And, it sucks. Like life's not fair. If you had Josh Young and you thought he was the 7th best prospect, as I did before the injury, it's not fun to be like, okay, now he's not anymore. But that's the reality. Like part of the reason why he was ranked where he was is because he was going to help you this year. And he's not going to help you this year anymore. So that's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Take away the proximity and then you lose the development time, and who knows how he's going to do coming off the injury. So yeah, a lot more questions there with Josh Young. Unfortunate injury to a really good prospect. And then Matt Allen, what was behind his move down?
Oh man, this one sucks. But he had a second surgery on his right elbow in January. He was on his way back from Tommy John surgery, which he had in May of last year. So, the hope was that he was going to return to game action in like June or July of this year, maybe. It's never good when guys coming back from anything like that have to have a second surgery. Like whenever a Tommy John guy doesn't have that normal sort of back in 16 months type of trajectory, it means something went wrong and it's bad. Tommy John's not a 100% success rate. It's like an 80 to 85% success rate. Mm-hmm. And it's not good. He might be able, like, I see we have a note up from a couple days ago saying he might be able to return to minor league action by the end of the season. To me, that's not going to happen. Like, that's just spin from the team. I'd be shocked if he pitched in games this season. So I moved him
It's
up.
just like the team giving him a carrot at the end of a stick, kind of.
Yeah.
Giving him something to work for.
Right. I mean, maybe he's pitching in like the Arizona Fall League or something like that. But I don't read that note and be like, oh, okay. Like it's all good. It's probably not good. Which sucks because he's awesome.
Yeah, you hate to see that. Definitely check out James's prospect rankings, his dynasty rankings as well. James, on the outlook, or on the outline rather, you had ceiling questions rant. So I'm just going to turn it over to you over the rest of the show, and just let you say whatever needs to be said in that regard.
Yeah, I get there's some questions that are really annoying to me, and it's not a shot at anyone who asks these questions, because I totally get it. I have factored in what I think each player's realistic ceiling is into where they're ranked on the top 400. And like, a question I get all the time is just like, can you just rank these guys just based on ceiling? And it's just like, you'd
never considered the
am I ranking these guys based on their 99th percentile outcome? Because that's just
craziness,
really insane. And everyone that I have ranked in the top 20 has an incredibly high ceiling. Everyone I have ranked in the top 50 has an incredibly high, like, best case scenario outcome, right? Like, just, are you just asking who has the best combination of raw power and speed? Like, I feel like that's what a lot of people are asking when they ask that question. But like, Nick York, I think people think Nick York is this guy with, like, he's just kind of a high floor guy, right? Like, no, he's got a ridiculously high ceiling. Like, do you remember when Anthony Rendon won the MVP? Like, that could be Nick York 6 years from now. Like, it doesn't need to be power, speed, youth, athleticism equals ceiling. Like, Ellie De La Cruz,
Jose Altuve for a decade.
Yeah. Like, Ellie De La Cruz has a ridiculously high ceiling. Mm-hmm. He also has a ridiculously low floor, and like, it would just be completely irresponsible to, like, if I was just ranking guys based on their power and speed combinations, that wouldn't be useful. That wouldn't get you very far, and you shouldn't build your farm system like that in your dynasty league.
You can't just build your farm system based on power, speed lottery tickets.
Right. Like, look at Freddie Freeman. Look at look at Rafael Devers. These guys all have very high ceilings. It's just, everyone's different. Every player is different. Outcomes, there's an incredibly wide range of outcome for every prospect. And like, I think the rankings are very good and they're very useful because I've tried to factor in, like, I love ceiling, and I tried to factor that in as best I can on the rankings. And if you ask me, rank these four guys just based on ceiling, I'm probably just going to rank them in the order I have them ranked on the top 400, honestly, because like, everyone's got a very, very high ceiling if they hit their 99th percentile outcome.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You're nice about it. That was a nice rant. And as you say, you're not crapping on these people who ask these things. But this is something you've put a lot of thought into, and you've taken ceiling under careful consideration. So yeah, I could see how that could get under your skin a little bit. Those ceiling questions. Well, anything else on your mind today, James?
No. This was fun. This was hopefully a nice little therapeutic break for everyone, and happy drafting out there to everyone who's got a slow draft going on. Please, I know these are tough times as baseball fans, but please keep supporting RotoWire. Please keep supporting, every site or service you use that you pay for. It means a lot to continue to get that support from everyone during these times. I mean, we're going to keep pumping out content. We're going to keep giving you podcasts and everything like that. And not just us, at any site that you've been using, and as long as it's not related to MLB, please keep supporting it.
Absolutely. I think that's really well put. And we appreciate all your support here at RotoWire. And to those out there who, have struggled during this lockdown and maybe facing uncertainty, just, know you're not alone in that regard as far as the ups and downs with the will they, won't they, and just try to keep your head up. We'll be here. And James, I look forward to talking with you on Friday and Saturday on XM. Hope some of you can join us there. Otherwise, we'll catch you next week here on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, brought to you by WinBet.